Hello and welcome to another episode of the Cliff Notes podcast, where we ask a leader and find a way. Today I'm being joined by an old colleague, Hayden Sutherland. He's a background in digital strategy, technology delivery, and he's now based up in Glasgow. For over 25 years, his industry experience, including digital transformation, online architecture and e-commerce and project delivery. And for 13 years, he's been running his own Ideal Interface international consultancy, focusing on transport, retail, financial services industries. And today he's joined us to talk about founder and chair of the Open Transport, an organisation that oversees the open standards for transport and mobility account interoperability. Easy for me to say at this time of day. Hello there, Hayden.
Good. Hello, Tristan. Good morning. It's good to talk to you.
So, what's brought you to this Open Transport initiative?
That's a very good question, and probably the question I get asked mostly is, "Why have you done this?" So the easiest way to describe what we've done is created two open standards that enable transport accounts to integrate, talk to one another, integrate, and work together to share transport customer data. So in the same way that you have open banking for financial services bank accounts, so you can link your HSBC, your Barclays account together, and you can see in one account, you can see both transactions for both different online banking accounts. We've actually created a standard that enables you to share the data between different transport accounts. In a nutshell, I think that's what we've done.
Just to bring that into sort of a broader picture, I mean, where does this fit, or who's going to use this set of standards?
That's a very good point. So now, where does this fit? Now, the easiest way to say is, so many people use different booking sites for different transport. So if you are traveling around the UK or any other country, you probably go into a rail booking website, Southeastern or Southwestern trains, or Greater Anglia or something like that, and you go into your bank, you go into that account, that transport account, and you make your booking for your ticket, and you purchase your ticket, and it shows up in your online account. Yes, you do get you do get the ticket, or either sort of as a paper ticket or as a barcode or even as a smart card, but your actual transaction and the details of that transaction are stored in the online account. And if you go into an underground, or you use a riverboat, or you use a private taxi service, you go into every single different account and you create portions of your journey, or different tickets, and different journeys are recorded in different online accounts. So what you're doing really is, by using all these different accounts, you're creating parts of your overall transportation. You're creating different data sets, and you're locking them away in different silos of accounts all over the place. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could join up those accounts, all the different accounts that you own or you manage, you're responsible for? Wouldn't it be great if you could go into just one account and see all the other different tickets and journeys that you'd made in all those different accounts? Now, what that does is that puts the user, or the customer, the traveling customer, back in control, because they don't have to then have 12 different apps on their mobile phone, 10 different tabs open when they want to do their transport expenses at the end of the month, or any other sort of use case like that. You can go into one app, one online portal, and then see all those other linked accounts joined together. It really is a way of actually then showing the end-to-end journeys for a customer, and them seeing it in one place. And that's just the start of what we're doing.
So the idea is to make multiple journeys or managing account balances easier for the general public, or is there something a bit more than that?
Well, the first step is to be able we've created a standard that enables the data within each account to be viewed. So if you've got all those different tickets and journeys in different accounts, you can view the tickets, journeys, and the discounts that you've got in each of those accounts in a consolidated place, or what we call federating the accounts. But the longer term aim has to be to mirror what the online banking community has done with open banking, and to enable the functionality to be richer. So in other words, you can look at, if you can update information in another backend. So you could, if you've, I don't know, say you're managing all your transport in one separate account, you might say, well, actually, I want to top up that other account. I want to move the balance of the account of that transport, that credit in that account, from one account to another. The long-term view is in the same way that open banking enables you to do bank transfers and pay for stuff, that open transport enables you to do that. But we're realists now, and saying that the first step is to be able to provide a consolidated view. The next steps down the line are to talk about transfer and updating back the accounts, and writing, should we say, writing back to those source accounts.
Okay, so I understand it's a sort of a phased program. Is there sort of is there other sort of benefits when you're seeing as a transport operator, or a sort of a city or a county level? Are there benefits for them too?
Well, yes. It's probably worth saying that when I say, well, there's two open standards here, we haven't just created an open standard to enable these accounts to be integrated. What we've also done is created a second API. The second API standard is it's a central operator lookup information. Now, if you imagine that if you're a transport operator, a transport provider, and you provide an API for your account, unfortunately, it's not a field of dreams. If you build it, people don't suddenly know where it is and find it. In other words, how do you know, with all these APIs being created for all these different customer accounts and all this information being exposed by these endpoints, how do you know where to find them? So we decided that as well as creating this customer account standard, we've created as we say, an API for APIs, a directory lookup service, to make these transport accounts more discoverable. Now, that in itself has huge benefits for not just the transport industry. It has potentially a wider benefit, because if you can associate other things beyond just transport accounts into that lookup service, you can find other information. We're talking to other organizations about linking off to transport assets. Now, that could be a bus shelter, that could be a street light, that could be a ticketing machine. But we're also talking to wider regional and sort of city-wide and regional initiatives who are saying, oh, you've created an API directory lookup service for transport. Can we extend that to being more of a wider regional lookup service to look for, I don't know, congestion or other utilities? And the honest answer is yes, it can be extended to be able to do that as well. So what we've created, we think, doesn't just have benefits within just the transport, or what we call the mobility industry. It has a wider potential reach, and can help to be a more general API lookup service for other utilities and other services as well. So it has a much wider benefit.
Mm-hmm. So is the proposal that this could speed up adoptions or implementation for sort of a broader market?
Yeah. Well, the whole thing about creating an open standard is that we've done the work. And it's not just myself and a couple of people locked in a shed who have come up with this idea. We've had input now from, I think it's nearly 30, but it might be even more than that now, input from different people from all over the transport and mobility sectors, from transport organizations and authorities, many different transport providers, bus transport providers, ferry, train, subway, riverboat, and other inputs, even from people such as car parking apps, have contributed to this standard. And it's that industry expertise has gone into this.
Sponsorship of this podcast has been brought to you by Holding Bay, the digital web agency. Holding Bay specialises in working with B2B companies, like manufacturers, to build better solutions and drive better sales funnels. So if you would like to build a web application or improve your branding and sales funnel, get in contact today. holdingbay.co.uk or call us on 01273 044 019.
What I mean by that is that we've done all this analysis, we've created this design. So it means that if people are after specifying a standard for for account interoperability, we've done the hard work before them, and we publish this as an open standard, so it's utterly free. It's utterly free to adopt and even adapt, and it's utterly free to take on and use, saving any organizations the time and effort of designing and analyzing their own proprietary API standards.
Okay, so and for people who aren't maybe as familiar with an open standard, this is therefore not a sort of a proprietary standard or a license fee or something else that's required in order to start using this.
Yeah, it's the whole point about an open standard is it is free without condition, without cost, without constraint, and there are no caveats in that. The only thing we really ask is that people credit us when they do use it. Whether we've written it just right in their terms and conditions and say credit the Open Transport Initiative, and that's all. That's all we really ask, is that credit is given. The whole point about an open standard is if you try and get it out to help as many people as possible, it's basically something that all the people that have contributed to this haven't done it on the altruistic understanding that this standard can be turned into an open standard and given away. It also meant that my own consultancy, where we retained the intellectual property all the way we were working on the open standard, we've had to give away all that intellectual property. And it's worth just mentioning that although I run Ideal Interface and the company that we started to form this and protect the IP under, the intellectual property was all given away, and it's no longer within my own company. It's now run under a separate organization called the Open. Technically, it's a company that's a limited company, but it's run as a not-for-profit, which oversees any further changes to the standard. And there is a chair, myself, and a board that's been decided who oversee any further changes to that standard. But it's free, it's utterly free, and can be, and it's really with the aim of giving this to the transport industry so they can be as adopted as quickly and as uniformly as possible.
Is there anyone who's yet started investigating using it, or it's people have got it out and testing yet, or maybe it's not yet that you can tell us about these things?
Well, we've obviously in the creation of this standard, we got inputs from software vendors in the transport industry, transport providers, and consultants within the transport industry. And each one of them, as we're going through, a lot of them are saying this is really useful. We should look to incorporate this, but we have been speaking to rail operating groups, mobility as a service, what they call MaaS providers, people who provide these platforms for multiple transport systems transport operators to be run within. We've had a huge interest in those. We've had interest from and not just in the UK. We've had only just yesterday I was on the email with the head of an analyst within the transport organization of a major European country who wanted to know about the adoption of this standard. So it's under wraps exactly who is adopting this right now. And but let's just say we've had significant interest. I was at something called Rail Festival in Amsterdam a couple of months ago as we were working through this standard, And I was literally having lots and lots of people come up to me and say, is it true that you're doing this? Because we didn't think that anybody would even do this. This is really interesting. So we've had a huge interest in it. But it's suffice to say that this isn't going to happen overnight. Adoption of this standard doesn't just happen hugely very quickly, because software development, software systems, and they take a long time to get specified and get delivered, and they have a long shelf life. So we're realists, and we're saying that those that are asking, can they get involved, can they adopt it now? Yes, of course they can, but that may take a year, 2 years to implement correctly. And those ones that have only just implemented the current ones, they might be able to retrofit this, or they might be able to add it to the product backlog for their software. But it's going to take time. But I'm hopeful that, as I say, that a free standard is going to make it easier, and they won't feel that they're going to get charged for it. So it's there, and it's hopefully we'll get more and more people adopting it quickly over time.
Mm-hmm. No, I do appreciate standards are not easy things to implement and grow. It does take time, and then time to flow into the general use. So, I mean, what are the next steps for the standards? I mean, where are you going next?
Well, the first step is we're on the march to publicize this as much as possible and gain awareness of what we've done. We're talk as well as talking within the industry. We're talking externally. For example, other industries. I mean, the open banking community. We're trying to do two things there. They're interested in what we're doing because they see that we're doing something interesting that's comparable. But obviously, we're behind in our sort of evolution of this compared to the online banking and the open banking community. And I think we're also trying to learn from them as well. So when we talk to people in that sector, we're trying to say, okay, well, where did you go wrong, and how can we leapfrog? How can we sort of leverage the learnings that you got from a few years of implementing open banking? How can we do open transport quicker and more effectively? The next steps then are, obviously we've had a lot of feedback to get to version 1 of the standard, which was officially launched on the 3rd of January this year. It's been fierce, and been very, very busy since then. But the next steps after that are, we've already had a couple of people talk about possible suggested tweaks and amendments to that central lookup. So we're looking at possible ways that can be evolved and moved to possibly a version 1.1 over the next 3 to 6 months. And of course, that will need to be run by the board and done officially now as an open standard should be. And before we do that, and we're also looking at, there are other initiatives. So there are other standards. There are other standards for all sorts of things in the transport industry. So we're talking with the different people and different organizations who run those standards to say how we all fit within the big jigsaw of transport and mobility standards. How does open transport as an account interoperability standard, how does that align to other things within the transport industry? How does it align to APIs for booking? How does it align to APIs for transport alerts and updates? How does it align to transit specifications that tell you how much charge there is in a scooter, any scooter, or a bike hire scheme? All these things, now we've launched this, we now need to make sure that we don't cross over and overlap into anybody else's standards, but that we do reference the other standards. And it's an evolving, mature marketplace, and we're making sure that open transport sits correctly within that overall standards landscape.
So, I mean, we're in changing times with all those sort of politics and the import exports and different changes in different transport. And do you think that this is a part of shaping the future?
We're really, really optimistic that what we've done will be adopted not just in the UK, not just in Europe, but globally. I think But overall, I mean, open APIs, API standards, the API economy, it's not going to go away. It is, this is an inevitable part of the APIing of life and utilities and services. We're talking, the very fact that other industries and sectors, the telecoms industry, the health sector, obviously the financial services, and other industries and sectors are all moving towards APIs and the API economy and the API enabling of their services. This is a trend that's not going away. This is the right way to do it, and it's the way that times are moving. So yeah, we're keen. We're optimistic that we've made the right thing. We've done the right thing, and it's going to be part of shaping the overall future of transport interoperability.
Yeah, agree with that. Yeah. No, transport and these services there, it does take time and they evolve over quite sort of long periods. But do you have a dream or can see the way that you can see some of the plans that might line up over the next sort of 5 to 10 years with other initiatives?
I think, I mean, what would I mean? Let's be honest. I'm gonna keep making lots of comparisons to open banking. But open banking really came into effect well from January of 2 years ago now, just 2 years ago now, in the financial services community. Not just because, and definitely not because the banks were all working together to create an API standard, and financial services were all agreeing. It came because of something called the PSD2 regulations that were more European regulations and legislation that came top down. So I have to be as realist about adoption and say that, and I think the polite phrase is, it's bottom up. But unless there is a top down mandate for compulsion for some people to do this and some organisations to do this, they won't do it. So I think if I can see what would I like to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, as well as transport software vendors adopting this by themselves, and transport providers writing in a requirement in their new for their new system and their new ticketing and account system that, for example, the requirement would be, our accounts should be interoperable with other transport providers' accounts via an open standard, as well as having those requirements written in. I think it's highly likely that transport authorities will start to, if they want interoperability between the public and the private sector for transport, they will have to mandate and make this an obligation for those transport providers that they have some control over, and make that top-down drive to get these as standards, as well as the bottom-up industry adopting it by itself, if I'm absolutely honest.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I know it's not sort of topic specifically we've covered today, but on a lot of the sort of environmental concerns and the standards to lower emissions, I can imagine there's going to be a certain call for at city or country or whatever level to be able to assess the public transport usage and the sort of combined usage to pull that together, and there could be foreseeable that there can be a connection there with being aware of what's available and what's being used, helps that locale, that organisation, that government area be able to understand that as a better picture.
Yeah, you're spot on, Tristan. You're spot on, because I think we agree that if you can start to see, a customer can start to see their consolidated contracts, tickets, journeys, concessions, all in one place, in one central place, you build up a holistic view of your journeys. And that means that you can be nudged, because, let's say in a way to push towards not just a cheaper or a faster method of transport to get you, but nudged towards a more greener option. I was only yesterday an electric vehicle innovation workshop and conference where we're talking about how electric vehicles and how, you nudge people towards the more greener or the net zero usage of CO2, and talking about how it's only for transport, by building up a holistic view of all your transport needs, you can actually understand sort of how you can be encouraged to adopt cleaner, greener, better ways of traveling that are better for the environment overall. So yeah, we see that. I mean, it's not definitely saying that open transport is going to clean the air of everything, but it takes these sort of things and help nudge users towards more informed journeys, and therefore help to persuade them or to nudge them towards better, more environmentally friendly ways of transport. Definitely. So we see it's playing a very, very small part, but it's playing a part. We hope it is nevertheless.
Oh, agreed. Just as a factor that maybe comes in there rather than its primary aim.
Yeah.
So now I've boxed you into this corner on the topic of educating us all of what the possible future might be. If you needed to grab a couple of things to come out on top from this corner, what would you reach for?
Well, I think to be absolutely honest, I need one really thing. We've got a lot of people in the transport industry. If I could have the telephone number for the person who's responsible for the legislation in Department of Transports, for I felt the Rolodex of all those different people across the globe, so I could phone them up and tell them not just about the benefits of open transport standards, but how they need to adopt this in a uniform way. If I could pluck that out of thin air, a magic sort of black book of all their contact details, I think that's what I would love, Tristan. So if you can magic that up for me, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, your wish is granted for in this magical space today. So thanks very much for joining us today, Hayden, and giving us a picture into this world and what the opportunity might lie. Could you give us an idea of how to get in contact with yourself, or if people want to know more about these standards?
Oh yes, good point. Actually, yeah. For all your listeners, they need to just look at opentransport.co.uk. Say opentransport.co.uk. There's a link there. That's the website that we've got for all the central information about what we're doing. There's an information about the team that's behind this, and that's going to be growing in a minute. There's links off to the API specifications themselves. We have published the API specifications online on Swagger Hub, and there's also some FAQs, and there's a blog of all the updates that we're doing. So when this podcast gets published, we're going to be blogging about that as well. So you'll see that there. So I say opentransport.co.uk. If your listeners have any questions, they can just contact us. There's contact details on that site.
That's great. So they can get in contact with yourself or another representative through that site as well.
Yep. There's an email address for contact@opentransport.co.uk that goes to a few of us, and one of us will answer.
That's great. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, and we look forward to coming back and finding out a bit more of how it's progressed in the next years.
Thanks, Tristan.
Thanks for joining us today on this episode of the Cliff Notes podcast. If you'd like to get in contact with myself or the guest, the details are always available on the website, cliffnotespodcast.com, or we're on Twitter and Facebook on @CliffNotesPod, and we welcome all feedback and communication. Thanks again.